All right, Sam, let's move on to our bonus Afghanistan segment. This should be a relatively long one, and it's mainly going to be led by you, but I'll chime in here and there. But yeah, I thought I'll just give a quick overview of the different segments because we're going to include specific timestamps for this Afghanistan video as well. So first, we're just going to give a quick recent overview of Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan, pretty much. Then we're going to include a timeline of different events over the past 20 years, not all of them, or even maybe going further back a bit, I'm not sure. And then the different actors involved, some other notable events, Afghan views, so different people in Afghanistan, diaspora who have been interviewed on TV and other places, the media's coverage, international reactions, and even end with further analysis. So I think it's pretty much that, but I'll see what we say and I'll timestamp accordingly. But yeah, so I'll throw it back to you, Sam, to get us started.
Sure. So, I mean, I just wanted to add that, yeah, it's been this is awful, pretty much all over, like everything we cover today. So it's not if you don't feel good, probably don't watch it. But I think, it's just awful things. But at the same time, though, I would say that there is quite, no, I don't want to blow our own trumpets or anything, but there is, because we had access to Persian sources, I do feel like there's quite a lot of interesting content in this. And I've been getting into a lot of debates with people, and people become very emotional and get very angry and all that. I highly suggest, because most of us can't do anything about any of this, to just remain calm. And if I'm describing something, it doesn't mean I approve of it or I care about it or I support it and all that. So because especially in Iran, the debate surrounding this has been very heated, and I love discussion and debates, and I like even lively discussions, but heated debates, I'm not a fan of.
Really? You didn't tell me about that. Interesting. I mean, I could imagine, but yeah, I could
Yeah,
see.
well, yeah, it gets it should, like, facts. I like, I mean, not that there are, like, I'm a bit postmodern in that sense, but let's look at events and what's happening. But to give a very short overview of the recent event, was that following the 2-year, I believe, negotiations between the US government and Taliban forces, US government, the deadline for US government to fully withdraw from Afghanistan is approaching. They withdrew significant amount of their forces, and Taliban used the opportunity to take over the country, pretty much. I mean, if anybody was following, it was a couple of days of news of, like, they took over this province, now they took over this province, this capital, and finally they were at the gates of Kabul. They seem to have sort of in a peaceful manner entered Kabul after former President Ashraf Ghani, the president of Afghanistan, flee from the country. From what we know so far, he didn't let anybody know, including Abdullah, who's sort of him and Ashraf Ghani were in sort of a power sharing government type thing. So, or Amrullah Saleh, his vice president, who now claims to be the legitimate president of Afghanistan, although nobody knows where he is, and he's in hiding.
His what? Sorry, you said his wife's president? Sorry, I misheard you.
No,
vice
sorry,
president. Sorry,
his vice.
My bad.
Yes, his vice. Yeah, Amrullah Saleh. Yeah, he's vice president. Nobody. He. People think he's probably still in Afghanistan. Following the takeover, there were gruesome scenes of people fleeing. What came across was the lack of planning by US and NATO forces in evacuation. The people who were mostly left behind were Afghan people who had worked with US government or US forces or NATO forces or foreign companies. And we saw some really awful scenes. two people were dropped from an airplane. One of them was a youth footballer, we found out today.
Oh, really?
So really tragic scenes.
Wow.
Um, I mean, for now we are just, by the way, describing it. Following Ashraf Ghani's escape, Hamid Karzai and Abdullah released videos. Hamid Karzai is Afghanistan's former president, and all these people reside in what is called Arg. Arg is Persian word for citadel, and the citadel of Kabul is Arg, is where all the officials, presidents, all of those reside. And they're there. Taliban forces entered the Arg, entered the citadel. And now there are apparently negotiations going on over some kind of either power sharing, but I think it's more likely that it's going to be a handover of power. Taliban were also released the statements, and they were trying to basically calm everybody down and try to stop the rush to the airport and rush to the borders and all that. They were somewhat conciliatory in their messages. I mean, even before taking over Kabul, as they were taking over major cities like Herat, they left the diplomatic missions of different countries. They left them in peace, and they said, we provide security for you. And now they basically are playing they're playing this game that we are going to be good international actors. Even further than that, they said that women will be allowed to work and study as long as they follow Islamic laws, which is basically leaves the door open quite a bit for different interpretations. On a positive sign, though, the day after Taliban took over, both Ariana TV and Tulu TV, which are Afghanistani, I believe, private news channels, they both had went on with female presenters, so and there was no incident. One channel apparently has been closed for a short period of time, and female reporters were present at the Taliban news conference, which was fantastic and odd. And it's genuinely, we live in the Matrix, I feel, and Matrix has caught a virus. Anyway, but so they were very conciliatory towards everybody, pretty much, international things. One thing was, which just stood out in their news conference, was fascinating to me, was that they were accused of censorship and all that based on Sharia law and all that. And they said, yes, well, because the same day Facebook announced that they're not going to allow Taliban to post on their platform and all that. So they reversed the attack, and they attacked Facebook and saying, yes, Facebook does censorship. So, you guys are the real,
That became official. The last I read was that Facebook was considering, wasn't sure.
I feel like
2 days ago,
I don't know. I feel like Facebook has been put in a very tough position now. They don't know what to. It's an odd one.
Because they can take over the former government accounts, right? I mean, once they become government,
official, it's just fascinating. But that's what's been happening. Now we are on third, fourth day of Taliban takeover, and the violence is kind of starting to come up. There were some flag protests. There are reports of shooting. There are reports of killing of family members of some reporters. None of it completely confirmed as of yet, but it's and it's not clear who's in charge who's in charge of Taliban either. There are a number of powerful people, but there are a number of political leaders still in Doha. So it's a bit of a mess. Nobody knows what's going on. And so that I just wanted to have a focus on the events before moving on
some
to
of the
these are the recent events.
Some of the senior leaders are still in Qatar, right? based on what
Yes, and even some are, from what I understand, are in Pakistan or were in Pakistan and negotiating with the Pakistani government, because we'll get into all the nitty and gritty, but Pakistan is a key player in this.
Yeah, 100%.
So anything I missed out maybe on the recent events you want to
No, not
point
that I
out?
could think of. Not that I can think of. That sounded about right. That sounded about good as far as I know.
All right, so let's, I mean, we said, let's jump into the sort of a timeline thingy. And it's not a, I wish we had there are these great game videos made by gamers on YouTube that they do a timeline of these games that have like these sort of unusual structure, storytelling structures. I wish we could do one of those, because they do this timeline and all that. We don't have the graphic or the capacity to do that yet. As of yet, it's going to be a very loose timeline, but let's go through it. So we have the 9/11 attacks, and then following that, perpetrated by Al-Qaeda, Bin Laden, and Al-Qaeda is located. Al-Qaeda is basically has safe haven in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, and they do cooperation together because, like, Al-Qaeda used to train Taliban forces and all that. U.S. quickly demands the handover of Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda forces. Taliban requests to see evidence. U.S. says there is no need for evidence. It's proven and it's obvious. Bin Laden himself has claimed the attack. Taliban is kind of dragging its feet now, but says that yes, we are willing to negotiate and hand him over to a third country that is not under US influence. By the way, references are in the description for this for sure. I think this was covered by The Guardian, if I'm not mistaken. There are also reports, US, by the way, US rejects this offer because there are, according to certain leaks, because they want it, according to certain leaks by people who were in the rooms, certain generals, famously, there is this general says that following 9/11, I went into the room and they had a list of countries they wanted to bomb. So US, for one reason or the other, whichever story you want to believe, rejects Taliban's request to get Bin Laden through a third country. They start bombing, I think, by October. US invasion starts by October. This is, again, I couldn't find the exact reference for this, but there are, I heard this in by a couple of experts, that by December, Taliban even offers to sort of stand down as the center of power, hand over the power, just stop the bombing and all that. US rejects that, and the invasion is successful. In a sense, the major cities are taken over. It's interesting to point out, with the major help from Iranian forces, who, if you want to check out BBC documentary about that, who pretty much through their allies, the Northern Alliance, they give all the coordinates that US needs for bombings and all that. So invasion is successful. Then there are these conferences, I believe in Germany, I want to say in Bonn, but I'm not sure, about the future of Afghanistan, mostly including people from diaspora, people from former governments and all that. And there is a sort of the votes are equal, like the votes for an Islamic Republic and a monarchy are equal. US intervenes and sort of pushes to have an Islamic Republic have there instead of a monarchy. I think, to be honest, that's one of the key mistakes that US makes. Again, some not just my view, some other analysts like Mr. Nurizadeh agrees there. Well, and then after that, we could go through specific events, but I don't think it's worth it as much. After that, what you have is the short-lived sort of caretaker governments. Then you have Karzai government, which is was led by Hamid Karzai, who is still in Afghanistan and is considered a good guy now. At the time, his government was famously corrupt. His brother was one of the people who was majorly involved in heroin and opium trade. There were reports of, bags of money, briefcases of money from like Iranian government, from Russian government, from American government being left in his office. But he was interestingly opposed to he was opposed to American black op missions in Afghanistan in the south. He was opposed to continuous drone strikes. And when he left the government, eventually he became the biggest critic of US presence from the liberal side, let's say, from not the Taliban side. And besides Karzai government, what you had was all these local warlords in different regions who were pretty much as bad as Taliban in terms of corruption, in terms of fanaticism. Some of them were as bad as Taliban as well. You had all these reports of heads being cut off, hands being cut off, and then you would have US troops show up, and then US troops themselves, majority of killing in Afghanistan was done through air power, to be honest. But majority of killings by soldiers, it seems to have been done by US forces as well, even more so than Taliban, which is just all of, again, I did give a sort of a warning in the beginning of this. It's not a fun thing if you don't feel good about it. So you have this period of Hamid Karzai, very corrupt government, but there seems to be gains made. By the end of Karzai government, and when this whole sort of corrupt system is sort of entrenched and established, then Taliban is starting to sort of reverse its fortunes. It's trying to regain territory. It's trying to do better and better. And you have, that's why better and better, you have all these new strategies they developed, like they develop like these bombs that are more sophisticated. They go off, in a timely fashion. They're timed, so they go off multiple times. It's gruesome. It's awful. They develop, like the US tries to train Afghan forces, but then Taliban, simply sends one infiltrator, and it's so hard. Afghanistan doesn't have any infrastructure. There is no documentation about people's past and all that. And then after 3 months, after they learn how to use weapons, they turn the weapons and kill Americans and mostly Afghan people. So you had all these events, and so Taliban started to reverse its fortune. And then Obama is in charge now in America, and Americans are more focused on internal issues, economic issues. Then you have the surge. With the surge, they increase the troops. So he pulls out of Iraq. Iraq was the wrong war. Afghanistan was the right war. We are there to find bin Laden, and we haven't found bin Laden. There is the surge. They find bin Laden in Pakistan, living a few miles away from the offices of Pakistani Central Intelligence Agency. And by the way, there are I get into exact quote that highlights my point, that there were evidence from very early on that like by December 2001, or maybe by January 2002, Al-Qaeda forces all had left Afghanistan, except some like ragtag, like some low-level members. So there is the surge. What surge does is, they do push back somewhat against Taliban, but it's a failure overall because American soldiers die and because American generals are extremely incompetent. I mean, David Petraeus, McChrystal, all these people who are made as if they are genuinely Taliban stands for a lot, everything that I hate in terms of ideology, but their commanders seem to have been far more competent than the General McChrystals and David Patriuses of this world. Just look at the way how David Patrius, I don't know, I'm mispronouncing his name, but just look at the way he was turned out. He was uh, basically handling sensitive information with his mistress. Like,
Yeah.
just, we are dealing with children. We are dealing with genuine children. Surge is not successful, and Taliban does not even want to come to the negotiation tables. So what they do is just basically, this is where I mean, there has been lying and all that all throughout. I mean, from the start of the war, but now the lying becomes systematic. They start to redefine uh, measurements. It's easy to, again, creative accounting, as I mentioned on another topic. They use all these methods to justify their lies. For example, the famous one is the one on how you identify somebody as a Taliban member. For example, if two people that lived in that village said that he's a Taliban member, that was enough for that kill to be counted as not a civilian death, as a enemy combatant death. And I don't know, I feel like I have many people in Tehran that don't like me, and I'm sure they're willing to say a lot of things about me to have me blown up. So, so the surge is not successful. Trump comes in, then, and Trump's strategy is that, okay, we're not going to have so much American soldiers killed. We're just going to bomb the shit out of them. And it's caused far more deaths than previous strategy, but at the same time, to an extent, it worked. It brought the Taliban to the negotiation table, although Taliban refused to negotiate with the officially internationally recognized Afghan government. And I talked about Karzai government, but I forgot to talk about Ghani government, which is Obama Trump years. Ghani government came through power through an election. His main opponent was Abdullah, who's still in Afghanistan. And it's important to point out, in terms of tribal politics of Afghanistan, just to give a very, very, very brief overview. You have the Pashtun people who are connected to Pakistan and are Pashtun are probably the most powerful group. You have what are called, and I say that very reluctantly, Tajik speakers. I prefer to say Persian speakers, and they are another big segment of Afghanistan, and mostly focused in the north. You have the Hazara people who are they overlap with the Tajik people, and they are Shia or similar to Shia faith. So you have this, and there are so many other tribes, by the way, but these are the big players. Ashraf Ghani comes from the Pashto politics. Although he's from an Afghani diaspora community, I believe he worked in the World Bank and IMF. So he was a corrupt global technocrat. And on his corruption, there was no doubt from beginning. Everybody knew, it was discussed widely. Pretty much everybody believes. I don't have any hard evidence for this. There was a lot of evidence going around at the time. But his first election, he was most likely elected in a rigged election because Americans. Again, he was America's guy. And remember that, because that comes into play when we come to end of this discussion. I think he was America's guy, and Abdullah was viewed as the guy because he's a Persian speaker, because he's a Tajik speaker. His mother is Tajik, even though I think his father may be actually Pashto, because he was connected to Ahmad Shah Massoud, who was the leader of Northern Alliance, who was a freedom fighter who fought Taliban. Because of all those things, Americans didn't want him because he wasn't their guy in a way. By the way, not probably just Americans, Pakistanis, a lot of different groups. So he came to power in a very, very suspicious election, and his government from very beginning, very corrupt. Within 3 years, pretty much anybody who you could say was a Afghani official that was actually competent or was not fully corrupt or like until his eye level, like deep in corruption, just like until his, let's say, neck or something in corruption, had left Ghani's government. And Ghani went into coalition with some of the most gruesome people. Like it's just the level of warlords got even worse. Like you had people like General Dustam come in who are, awful track record of, torture, sexual misconduct. You had Hakim Gulbatyar, who, by the way, kudos to him. He was more of a man than Ashraf Ghani. I mean, I would say he's more of a man because he's basically Taliban. He's the head of the Islamist party in the Afghanistan parliament, and he would have people flogged. This is in 1990s. He would have people flogged for outside of Kabul. And by the way, this idea that Kabul had university before Tehran. Kabul University is older than Tehran University. So this idea that like this is something in their culture, or it's like they are reactionaries that pushed a society back. Anyways, so Ghani went into coalition with this kind of people. Although what Ghani did was also he kept a very close clique of young people, mostly diaspora, close to him, and he was just the most corrupt, technocratic, just empty talks, very, very worst. But in the end he had to enter sort of a power sharing thing with Abdullah. Second, there was his second term as a president, same problems, rigged elections. This time even more obvious. Again, he had to go into a power sharing thing with Abdullah, and just awful. His main focus was getting closer to America and India. That was his main foreign policy. He kind of alienated Iran to an extent. He tried to cozy up to like Arab nations, and somewhat successfully he did. And now, by the way, he's in UAE. So his government was a complete failure, and was a result of America's focus on try to basically accommodate the Pashtun, who, by the way, Pashtun are also a very important force in Pakistani politics. In a way, a lot of people see Taliban as an outgrowth of Pashtuns' political will to incorporate Afghanistan into Pakistan. So, by the way, all I'm saying are different interpretations. I don't subscribe to any of them because I don't know enough about the evidence, but I'm just giving you a bit of an overview of different things. And I'm going to mention some of the professors and all that they talk about this, but it's just because most of it is in Persian. I don't want to, it's just, it would be pointless at this. And let me give you a major example of Ghani's, for example, corruption thing. In the last year of Ghani's government, you had a situation where they claimed to have a 300,000 man army. According to most reports and according to leaks, at least 200,000 of them were ghosts. So they would write names. Yeah, they would write names, get the money for them, get the equipment for them that they could sell in the black market. But then you had Afghani soldiers because Afghanistan is it's a mountainous country, hard to reach different places, even close places and all that. And you had Afghani soldiers starving to death. You had Afghani soldiers boiling their shoes to feed themselves. Afghani soldiers that, by the way, now Biden is saying when Afghanistanis are not willing to fight for their country. Well, have you boiled your own shoe to eat it? Anyways, yeah. Anyways, like who puts the Ghani government in charge? Who was the biggest backer of Ghani? While a lot of people, including Russians and Iranians, were somewhat suspicious of him because he was such a American technocrat. Not that, by the way, Russians or Chinese or Iranians wanted Afghanistan to be better. It was just he was such a incompetent, corrupt idiot. But anyway, so let me now. I just about America's the fact that America was lying. I mentioned that Americans were lying. They were fiddling the numbers. Let me just give you this quote from the Atlantic. And the Atlantic is not. I'm sorry. I'm just looking for this quote, but I can't find it. I hope I haven't.
I don't see it in your notes.
Oh, no.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, it's in an updated version. I found
Okay.
it. The Atlantic is not some left-wing publication. I believe David Frum, one of them, probably. What would you describe him as? The I don't know, the representatives of the underworld. I don't know. One of the ambassadors from hell, David Frum, the speechwriter of George Bush, the man who came up with the axis of evil thing. A man so empty of anything. Like, he writes for the Atlantic, I believe. So I don't think this is some left-wing publication. But this is not from him. But the publication, I just want to point out, is not some like radical organization. So, quoting the Atlantic, based on they're talking about a Washington Post expose that's coming out as a book very soon. That's about secret documents regarding American involvement in Afghanistan. The quote: based on the trenches of thousands of documents obtained by the Post in litigation, as well as some previously released memos, the report shows that for nearly 2 decades, American leaders, Democrat and Republican, civilian and military, elected, appointed, and career civil servants have lied to us about how the war in Afghanistan is going. The Atlantic. So again, Democrat and Republican, civilian and military, elected and appointed. So don't people who want to focus the blame on Pentagon, to people who want to focus the blame on Republicans, don't. I don't think, that's, you should have a larger view. Yeah, it's pretty much. Now, so, I mean, I hope I gave let me give just at the end, again, a bit more details and minutiae for people who are interested in what's been happening right now. So I gave the sort of a timeline of what happened, and then US government has started negotiating with the Taliban, and sort of that's true, by the way. US government undermined Afghanistan, the internationally recognized government, although I would say their own corruption also undermined themselves. So everybody's a bad guy, and by negotiating with Taliban, they undermine the government, and then by clearly not having a plan, allowed Taliban to easily take over the whole country. Although, again, I would say, when you look at these documents, and I looked at some of them from Washington Post, it seems they had no options. They were bleeding ground for the last 3 years, and some like there was this peace negotiator today on Guardian saying that if America stayed for another month, there would have been peace. But from when you look at this peace in terms of peaceful handover and all that, so I don't want to minimize anything because I haven't looked at all the evidence, but they were bleeding ground for a long time, and it seems like Taliban were understanding that they had the upper hand now. So, and America was worried that if they truly understand that they have the upper hand, there will be a massacre, both of Afghans and Americans. And while Afghans can be massacres, Americans sadly cannot. Fortunately, at least Americans cannot. But Afghans, they're fine. I'm being sarcastic, by the way,
Yeah.
and ironic if anybody doesn't understand this. Uh, Ghani, until the last day, Ashraf Ghani was saying that people should call the police and report cases of violence. I mean, this man,
Call the
anyway.
police. But apparently, is
And
it
then,
like,
no, go ahead.
no, so I was gonna ask you, when they count, like you said, there were 3,000 army members, but some of them were like they didn't even exist or ghosts. But sometimes I hear they like add up the police and the army together. Have you heard them say it that way? They're like
No,
like
yes,
300,000.
no, 300,000 is police and army, but it's not bad though. It's not even if you like, that's bigger than like if that number was real, that's bigger than a lot of armies,
But I
and they
do
had
find
good
it weird
equipments.
though,
No,
adding the
no,
police
but
and the army together. I mean,
the thing
it,
is, they were technically fighting terrorism, so police
okay.
comes into that. So again, like, still though, still, I know what you mean. It's a, yeah, it's a bit like there are two different forces with two different set of activities. But yeah, still though, it's far more than what Taliban had. Anyways,
But Taliban, they say 200,000, right? Forces right now, like give or take, or
I
does that
think
not
so.
make
Yeah,
sense? Yeah.
yeah. I think so. I don't know. I
I
think
mean, yes.
less.
Okay.
I don't know. But anyways, sorry. Yes, Ashraf Ghani. And then, as Taliban were at the gates, Ashraf Ghani disappeared. He just disappeared. No, he didn't even tell his vice president, Amrullah Saleh, who I don't think he's doing the right thing by continuing. He said the war is not over and all that. But he does seem to be he seems to be a genuine man, at least, although I don't know much about him. But I think if he continues on his way, he will not have a beautiful end. But Ashraf Ghani and a close clique of him, including his head of security and another person whose position escapes my mind, the top of the head of the snake of corruption, the head of the swamp, ran away. For 2 days, nobody knew where he was. There were reports he was in Tajikistan or somewhere else. It turned out he went to UAE with his family and got diplomatic immunity, and then released the video saying that I left to avoid bloodshed, further bloodshed, specifically mine. And then on social media, Afghanistani people and Iranian people, everybody, even American, everybody pretty much destroyed him. Everybody is very angry. The ambassador, I mean, I don't know if everybody's a former now or actually has the position, but the former or current ambassador to Tajikistan, Afghanistan ambassador to Tajikistan, among many others, among former cabinet members, called for Ashraf Ghani to be put on trial for corruption, for betraying the nation. So Abdullah and Hamid Karzai, I would say, were genuinely, they are, I don't know how they're keeping it together, because they, in their video, they said we just leave his judgment to the people and to God. And they are right now. Hamid Karzai, again, somebody who was corrupt, and his brother was corrupt. Everybody knows all of this. But Hamid Karzai, there were 6 assassination attempts on him by Taliban. I think there is a video footage of him. Abdullah, one time Taliban tried to assassinate him when he was giving a speech, like twice, like in an event, and now they stayed in, and they are doing negotiations with the people who tried to kill them and their family members.
Yeah.
While Ashraf Ghani, who was a technocrat from World Bank, has just ran away. anyway, just shows, and then he was America's guy. And then America says, yeah, Afghani leadership has betrayed the Afghani people. Who put that leadership in? It's just I'm reaching the level of cognitive dissonance that I think my head is just gonna split open.
I heard that there was this lady on TV. I believe she was like the head of education ministry, and she was like, "Yeah, I can't believe that Ashraf Ghani has left. He had told me numerous times that he's not going to leave the country and stuff." I was like, "I hope you're not actually that naive and you're just saying this because it goes with the narrative." But
when you're in, I don't know which, like, if she was in Afghanistan or not. Was she in Afghanistan or
I
somebody
believe she
abroad?
was. I believe she was. I'm not 100% sure also that she was Ministry of
I
Education, but I
suppose in
believe
those
so.
situations,
Yeah.
you don't have the luxury of not believing, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, he escaped, and now let's Hamid Karzai and Abdullah are staying to negotiate, handover, whatever is going on. Let's get into nitty-gritty. Taliban is being conciliatory, and what do I mean by that? They left the diplomatic missions alone. The first official they met was the Russian ambassador. They met with Chinese authorities. They have, in both cases, they provided assurances that Afghanistan will not become a safe haven for terrorism. China and Russia are very worried about that. China and Russia have terrorist organizations that have very strong connections to Afghanistan through Central Asia. Central Asia is not a very, the national identities there have not been formed as strongly, and Islamic identity is very strong there, and Russia and China have both, everybody knows about Chechnya, and even before that, Russian Soviet involvement in Afghanistan, China with the Uyghur population. So we'll go back to China at some point. They also provided Iranian authorities with assurances that there's not gonna be any attacks on Iranian diplomats. However, they have not yet commented on Hazara community or Shia community, which is not getting. I love how, just the Shias seem to be listed. Even on the left, they care about Muslims, but not Shias. Like Shias are just, who cares? And last time Taliban was in power, they were the ones that were pretty much the actions that were committed against them were genocidal. I'm somewhat, I don't want to, it was mass murder to be specific, because they weren't killed because of their race, but for the way Taliban views them is that it's not like you chose to be a Shia. You were born to be a Shia. So even if you say, no, I want to convert to you, whatever you guys say, it's like, no, you have to die. You had the first appearance of their Taliban leader, whose name escapes my, Mullah something. This is an important thing, though. I'll get back to that. You had, no, let me actually I'll get back to it right now. I think I just wanted to, that's where we are right now. So Taliban is pretending that they're going to be a good international player, although violence has broken out. Now I want to give a bit of an explanation of my own. This is my own thinking. Taliban is not a centralized force, and one of the reasons they kept their leaders hidden was because they are not a centralized force, and they're held together by lack of explanation. If you leave all these empty gaps, each group or each tiny resistant group can fill it in with their own wants and needs, right? It's like a Rorschach painting. Political movements, especially on the rise, should be it's a broad church, and all Taliban that we knew till now was only held together through their opposition to the US and to a lesser extent to Northern Alliance and all those groups. Now I don't think even they know what the fuck is going on. There is no, like, I don't think the people in Doha, I don't think the people in the ARC, in the citadel in Afghanistan, I don't think either of them have full control over their forces. I think there is a good chance that the fact that they are being conciliatory could be used by another radical Afghan group to have a coup and push them aside. At the same time, I do think that now that they're in power, now that there is a tiny border between Afghanistan and China, and that could become a corridor for uh, for pretty much unimaginable wealth for these people, for the people who end up, controlling that gate that will be China's gate to through Afghanistan to Pakistan, which would be hugely important for China as it tries to encircle India and completely marginalize India. So, like, there is no, it's kind of like people, some Iranian people were comparing it to Iranian revolution, in my view, in a very idiotic manner. But the reality, there is a similarity, and wherever there is a power vacuum and there is a new group that is coming to power, or look at the French Revolution, look at the Russian Revolution, not so much Cuban one, because that, I would argue, is more of a that's more of an imperial type thing. It's not an internal revolution. In these revolutions, even people are not preformed. They are formed while they are in power, while they are trying to, a movie I highly suggest is Death of Stalin. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen. It's a comedy movie. And look at that. Look at how Khrushchev, following the death of Stalin, goes from the reformer to the reactionary, to the conservative. And Bernia, the head of KGB, Stalin, Bernia, the most gruesome man in Stalin's union, goes from the conservative reactionary to the reformist. Power and power plays will change people. So I don't think, like, Taliban is saying this stuff and people say, but they're lying and stuff. I don't think they know what they're saying. I don't think they are in charge. Nobody's in charge now, although I do hope, because the civil war between American forces and Afghan forces have stopped with Taliban, we'll see less major killings. We'll probably, my guess is, brutalities will start. We'll see more oppression. We'll see more conflicts at a state repression level. But thankfully, less people might die in terms of war. So yeah, that was my analysis. Now, okay, so let's go to the. I can start with reactions, and then we go to the coverage. So I think Biden remarks were, to be honest, I think American removal of American forces from removal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan was a good thing, but his remarks and the way he justified them was, in my view, disgusting, and just showed. I mean, look, everybody just cares about themselves and their own country, but just the blatant way he put it and the way he put the blame on Afghani leadership and Afghani people not being willing to fight for themselves, not as if, I mean, who was in charge for the last 20 years? I mean, I was listening to Chapo Trap House about this, and they made a great point in a comedic fashion. It's really weird. We went to a country and we hand selected and appointed every members of the leadership, and after 20 years they're all corrupt pedophiles. How did that happen? What a surprise. Who did that? It's disgusting. He's disgusting, I think. And again, I'm somebody who thinks, like, if they stayed 1 month longer or 10 years longer, probably nothing would have changed, because they don't have the political will to do anything. But to put it this way, to make these remarks and to not even answer the questions about the fact that you couldn't even sort out the people who worked for you, the translators, the Afghani people who will probably, for one reason or another, will be tortured or killed or anyways.
Yeah, I mean, Biden has
Uh,
kind of been, that's been his approach even since the campaign, right? I mean, like the answers and stuff, he was just like giving them. He didn't care how
no,
it would
no,
come off or how he
but
would
no,
talk.
no, no. The reporters specifically asked about
Yeah,
him
yeah,
about the evacuation. You fucked that up. That's
yeah.
not like that has nothing to do with the 20-year war or
No, yeah.
whatever. Can't you plan evacuation? What are you?
I
I mean,
mean,
we know you're a senile old man, but
yeah. But we even covered that story. Remember when they first left and they left the airbase like 3 months ago and they didn't notify the Afghanis, and then people just came and like looted the base and all this. The Afghanistan commander like found out 2 hours later that the
yeah, yeah.
Americans had packed up and left.
And now CNN and Guardian are reporting that American officials are so worried that if these weapons are going to the hand of Chinese government, oh my God, it's just Jesus Christ. Boris Johnson was equally disgusting. Well, no, he was a slightly better. I think no, genuinely, Boris Johnson, European Parliament question like Keir Starmer. I hate the guy, but he at least talked about evacuation. But I would say they at least paid some lip service to the people of Afghanistan, unlike Biden, who just said no, it's the fault of Afghani people that we spent 20 years destroying their country. Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer both paid more lip service. So German officials, Macron also was a bit, I don't know, Macron was closer to Trump, I think, in his remarks. Although I can understand French, so maybe it was a translation issue. The coverage was fascinating. American news coverage largely focused on American lives lost, American money lost.
Yeah, the money.
The thing I found, I get back to this, but they kept mentioning the $2 trillion,
Yeah.
which is like, I found that so disgusting. Again, over 20 years, you spent $2 trillion in a country that is as big as most of your states, and you feel like and most of that $2 trillion, where did it go? Raytheon and
Yeah, exactly. It's not
other
like,
arm
yeah.
producers. Jesus
That's the
Christ!
money
Just
spent. What about the revenue or the income and all
yeah,
that? I mean,
I can't believe I spent $100 beating the shit out of that guy. I should have done it.
yeah.
Anyways, European coverage was mostly focused on the evacuation, and Germany had done a terrible job. France had done a terrible. Germany, I think, at some point had only gotten out 6 people. UK the same. It was, at least with the European thing, there seemed to be acknowledgement that like America, left. We are nobodies. At least we could have done a better evacuation. But it seems American and Europeans, because they didn't want to admit that they've lost the war. They didn't want to tell anybody till last moment, and that's why the evacuation tragedy happened. Iran, China, and Russia were obviously somewhat jovial, you could argue, and saying that America. Although I would say Iranian coverage was more focused on the tragedy, especially because refugees started coming in. Iran has already set up 4 refugee camps on the borders with Afghanistan. And, it's, like refugees coming from a country that is Afghanistan, for most of its history, has been part of Iran. They speak the same language. They share the same stories. We share the same TV, even though it's fucked up. It's
like BBC Persia, right? It covers Iran and Afghanistan,
BBC
right?
Persia now has more Afghan anchors than Iranian, so it's fucked up.
It seems like it's related to your previous point. It seems like all the European leaders who are in power, like Boris Johnson, they know that they can't stay back or do anything. But it's like Keir Starmer who was saying, like, NATO should stay back, or like British troops should stay back. I was kind of hearing. So, I mean, those who are in power, they know that they can't do absolutely anything without the
Oh yeah.
Americans. So, I mean, they don't even mention things like that.
Yeah, but I mean, watch our videos about UK politics. I hate the man. But he made a good point that at least for the last 2 months, they had known about the plan to evacuate.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just the lack of planning is,
Keir Starmer was saying that.
yeah, I think
But
so.
I
He
mean,
said it.
all analysts that went on TV, though, even the past 2 to 3 months, they were like, yes, of course, Taliban is gonna take over easily and stuff, but not Kabul, not Kabul. That's gonna.
No, but if you look at it, everybody, I mean, come on. No,
Yeah.
I mean, I thought so. And I think most people who really looked at the thing, that was TV people saying that. I think I admit I didn't even think it's going to happen in 10 days. I thought it's going to take 3 weeks. But what like, of course they're going to take over. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so let me get into some more. So now this was the coverage. Now let's get to international reactions, as in like country like official reactions. Europe has said they're not going to recognize Taliban, and Taliban said, "Oh no,
Mm-hmm.
really? How can I sleep tonight?" Nobody cares, and they're going to recognize Taliban in a couple of. It's like Trump, and it's just they talk shit, but they are nothing.
Yeah.
They have no independence. They have no army, so they should like just shut the fuck up sometimes. Say it's a tragedy and move on. Canada, Justin Trudeau saw an opportunity to again, promote himself on social media. So he released a video on TikTok saying that Canada has never recognized Taliban and will never do so. Again, I'm sure Taliban is. I'm sure as soon as Taliban has enough money to buy weapons from them, they will recognize them. No worries. Russians, as they've already met with some Taliban leaders. Before even Taliban took over Kabul, they already bolstered their border security on in Tajikistan. It's weird. Russia provides border security for some of former Soviet countries like Turkmenistan and Tajikistan. So they bolster border securities there. They're very worried about terrorism. But they have recognized the Taliban is in charge. Chinese officials have met with Taliban and have recognized that they have taken over. Again, they're worried about terrorism, as mentioned before. Iranian officials have met with Taliban before and after the takeover now, very worried about Shia minority. And as I mentioned, we are already setting up camps. There are reports that Iran has established contact with Hazara communities, and Hazara communities already has formed its own militias in Kabul and other cities. Iran, in a way, Iran long term is we'll get to the big losers and winners as well, but this is not good for Iran overall. US, as we mentioned, Biden blames the Afghan officials and people. George Bush and John Bolton came out of woodwork to say that the withdrawal was a mistake. Obviously, Pakistanis are very much trying to hide their glee. I mean, again, Omar Khan, somebody who I thought may become a potentially positive figure for Pakistan. I mean, he seems to have completely capitulated to the Pakistani army, and he talked about Afghani people they have broken the chain of slavery, but they're still mentally. I found I don't know what he was talking about, but I found it somewhat offensive. Maybe it wasn't though. Maybe I don't understand his reference point. But yeah, Pakistani officials are a bit trying to hide their glee, but Pakistani army is basically, they're having, I assume it's a 24/7 party right now. Their long-term dream has pretty much come to fruition. Uh, India is very worried. They've issued, they've trying to pull out their people. They're Indian. I watched a lot of the print and other Indian content, and some official even described it as a Pakistani invasion of Afghanistan, not Taliban takeover. They feel like they lost a major bet. They invested heavily in Ashraf Ghani and his projects and Afghanistan, they were trying to strangulate Pakistan and all that. And yeah, again, we'll come back to the big winners and losers. Saudi Arabia, UAE, and an Arab world are actually very worried as well. They sort of, following the invasion, they sort of threw their lot in with Ashraf Ghani and Americans, and now Taliban is back. So they have their old connections, but they are not. They're very worried as well because Taliban is closer. Taliban, you could argue, has sort of a Akhwan segment, which is Muslim Brotherhood segment, and Salafi segment, which are the religious hardcore people. So they are very worried about the Muslim Brotherhood segment, and Taliban has a better relationship with Qatar. So UAE is worried about that. Turkey is probably again one of the winners. They sort of have good relations with, sort of democratic Islamic groups like Muslim Brotherhoods, and they're Sunni. And the Turkish media is very worried, and Daily Sabah was very major Turkish newspaper was very negative, but Erdogan himself is pushing to have talks with Taliban leaders. And yeah, these are been the global reactions that I thought worth mentioning. What the situation is evolving, I would imagine maybe Turkey's meeting right now with Taliban leaders and all that. And yeah, anything else on international reactions I could add, or you want to add?
No, not any countries that I can think of. You've gone over all the main ones, yeah.
All right. So now I just want to, before I go into my own analysis, I just wanted to mention some of the name of professors that informed and some of the contents that informed our video. Novaro Media had a couple of fantastic, I think, debates. I think they had great analysts, Paul Rogers, Antoine Lieven. They had a couple of people who, in my opinion, have no expertise besides being of Afghani diaspora. And I don't think that makes you an expert, and makes like they claim Iranian and Pakistani support for Taliban. And again, if you put that in a context, sure, everybody deals with Taliban, but like it's just they also had idiots on as well. Iranian channels, BBC Persia and Iran International. Iran International is a channel I've been critical a lot. It's funded by Saudi Arabia, by Mohammed bin Salman's right-hand man, and it's really bad usually on Iran. But in my view, they did a fantastic job.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on Afghanistan, and there's a lady presenter. Her name escapes my mind. She did a fantastic job. The links are in the description if anybody speaks Persian or stuff. They on debate they had. I think partially it's because Iranian diaspora, liberal or educated, whatever community, is very limited, so they have to have good people on. So you had Mr. Nurizadeh, who I mentioned, somebody I agree with on most issues, gave great analysis. Mr. Atabaki, Iranian historian, historical sociologist, fantastic. Again, all these people I disagree with on a lot of issues. Dr. Sabeti, Iranian, I think he's a philosopher and spiritual studies PhD. Again, somebody I completely agree with on everything, but he made fantastic points. So, and Professor Soltani, he's Afghani professor. There's a lot of content of him online, and he's fantastic. He's a left-wing Afghani professor, I would describe him as. So check out all these people if you can, obviously. And before I get to my own personal analysis and talks with you, I forgot something, which is very important, which is I wanted to give a bit of the Afghan view. I have not carried out a survey. I have I'm just going by what I've just anecdotes and the coverage I've seen. From what we see so far, it seems that the diaspora community is completely shocked and disgusted by US withdrawal and very upset by Taliban takeover. That is very natural because diaspora community generally come from the people who are mostly hurt by Taliban, their actions, such. Afghani people, Afghanistani people who live in cities are also seen to be the biggest losers of this. People who had to work for their livelihood, had to work for US government or foreign government, and now are worried about their future, worried about their families, worried about people are describing cities as dead cities. There are no women around a lot. I wouldn't allow my family members to go out in such a situation. Then on a more positive, hopeful side, you have the view of rural communities and people on rural areas,
which make up, if I'm not mistaken, 60% or so of the population now in Afghanistan.
I think so, yes. And they are more hopeful that there will be less bombings, less air strikes, less drones, and less even less raids by Taliban or American forces, which is natural because the war is over. So that's I thought it's. I mean, again, I haven't, and I don't think anyone has clear view of what majority or Afghanistani people think about, but these were views that I came across and I thought are worth highlighting because those are the views that really matter in the end. And all the thing we talk about is happening to these people, not definitely to us, not to Americans. So that's about it. And now I kind of wanted to get a bit to my own as usual negative and probably wrong take. I don't know if you want to add something before that about the realities and
No. Yeah, no, go ahead. Just that, like some of
go ahead, sorry.
No, just sometimes some of like the diaspora you especially hear on the media, but they're like the most affected. So like sometimes I feel like their takes appear to be like some of the more like, I don't say naive, but like naive, or they're like, oh yeah, why didn't the US do this or stay over? But like you feel because they are just so directly impacted by that, they can't really think or say any different way.
That's the thing though. I used to think that those people are maybe more naive, but then again, I'm an idiot, so I take my philosophy from shitty movies. There's this movie Sicario, a spoiler warning, and it's about the fact that in the end the bad guy, the head of the cartel, says, who do you think we learned all these like torture and killings from? We learned them from you, from US government, from Colombian governments, we learned it from you, because he had murdered his wife and children. And the guy just looks at him, Benicio del Toro, and says, I know. He says, it's not personal, and he says, I know, it's personal to me.
Yeah.
And so while I do think, yes, maybe in larger scale of things, they are naive, but it's personal to them. So fair enough.
And I think in Novaro Media, one of them tells like one of the analysts that we mentioned, I think it's Anton Levin.
No, I did Antoine Liev, yeah.
sorry, yeah, any one of them where he tells them, "Oh, you're talking in such an academic way," and the guy wasn't talking in an academic way, really. He was more talking in an analyst
Journal.
kind of. Yeah,
Exactly,
he was
analyst.
fully removed, kind of, you know. He
Yeah,
was
yeah.
fully
That's
removed for
that's
it.
the. I mean, that my veiled criticism was as that guy Pasardai, if I'm not mistaken. He moved abroad from Afghanistan in 2005, I believe, when he
Yeah.
was 12. He helps with Afghani things, and yeah, it's just yes, because again, yes, we are talking about this as analysts because I mean, um, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah, my battery is very low.
yeah,
So yeah, I'll just mention that, and then we give a slight break so I can have water, and then I come back to my analysis as well. But yeah, I think I just yeah, we are not involved. This is not personal to us,
yeah.
and it's happening to Afghani people, and yeah, that's true. But yeah, I mean that doesn't make our views less valid or anything.
No, 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 no. Yeah,
Anyway, I'm just gonna so
yeah.
we
Change
are
headphones.
more careful about our mistakes. So okay, now let's in this segment basically I wanted to give just wanted to discuss issues, and because these issues there is no real answer, it's just going to be our takes rather than realities and all that. But there were a couple of things I wanted to discuss. So who are the losers and winners of what just happened? Do you have any opinions on that?
I think
Takes?
you should get started, and then we'll see if I have any.
Okay, sure.
Because I don't want to go back
So
all the way to the beginning and say, say, you know, like if the Americans stayed longer, it would have been the same thing. You know, these things have kind of been said and all that.
of course. So I think the real answer is we will see. But in a way you could say the real winner right now is Pakistan because they managed to have a Pashtun supported government instilled in Afghanistan, and the biggest loser is India because they
Mm-hmm.
invested so heavily and they lost so much. Now, besides losers and winners, let's just go on how does it play out for different players. If Afghanistan go like in a way, America could be the biggest winner here. If
Okay.
America starts to support Taliban, if they actually fund them and support them, they can have another basically Pakistan or Saudi Arabia, a sort of a semi-satellite state in their hand, in which they use to foment chaos and instability in China and uh, Russia and Iran. So if this is like in a way, if this is the long-term play of America, which in my view could be, this is
Interesting.
perfect move. You know, Taliban is on your side, and it's got the perfect location and
Mm-hmm.
geography to be used against China, Russia, Iran. So that's one way things could go. At the same time, China is trying to increasingly push to Afghanistan to encircle India to get further access to Pakistan and Iran. And we've discussed this in our previous videos. China and India are in this major rivalry, and China doesn't have access to seas and open waters as much. And India can block Chinese exports that go through Indian Ocean. So for again, if Taliban goes towards the Chinese thing, then America would become the biggest loser, as well as India, and Iran would benefit somewhat. Uh, but another potential possibility is that Taliban will go towards America or maybe even Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar camp, and or Pakistani camp to an extent, and it becomes a major issue for Iran. I mean, before America invaded in 2001, I believe in 2000 or 2001, Taliban attacked Iranian border towns. They killed Iranian diplomats, you know, and Iran, like India, had invested a lot of money in Afghanistan during the last 20 years. So, you know, all that is gone potentially if Taliban goes towards Americans and Arabic countries. So all these things basically, you know, are potential scenarios that come to my mind and are, you know, could happen. So I don't know. I just wanted to discuss. Do you think any one of them is more likely than the other? Or by the way, Afghanistan just could descend into a civil war, and yeah.
No, but that's a great point about the US. And I mean, their main concern remains really Russia, China, and Iran. So, I mean, that's huge. And the whole fact, and I guess that's kind of not talked about much. So I'm glad you brought that up about China's concern about India, which is, I don't know if mainstream media really talks about that or puts an emphasis on that. So that's great that you brought that up.
Yeah, and India is concerned about China.
Yeah.
But yeah, and okay, no, just yeah, I don't know which scenario is more likely, but to be honest, if I had to bet, I would say Taliban would go towards US because they have more money, and money usually trumps everything. So we'll see. But at the same time, the Chinese have been pretty good in providing money in certain cases.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And oh, for example, I just wanted to, and then I wanted to get into a debate about. Oh, sorry. First, let me say this, and then we get to our big debate. Like one of the reasons why I said Iran International did a great job, the host, she made this because she comes from a far more liberal like predisposition than us. And she made this point, which I found great. She said, you know, how could anybody trust Americans? They abandoned Carter abandoned Shah in during Iranian Revolution. Americans abandoned Kurds in Syria, and now abandoning Afghani government in Afghanistan. And I think while like you shouldn't try, like politics is not about trust and who's your friend or anything, but she's reflecting a real shift in the global middle class that I think America is, this was even more than maybe Trump, this was damaging to their, because it just comes as a, at the end of, as a culmination of so many things that I think the global middle class, if in my view, it's a good thing, is losing its faith in America and its powers and its values and all that. Like they're seeing the real picture. So, and I think she was right about all those things. So yeah, I thought that's like that seems to be like, if you want to, you know, it reminded me like when I was studying, we did history of World War I and World War II, and the idea was that how did the international rules and regulations broke down so much that people just started attacking another countries and grabbing land and all that. And you know, people would blame this dictator or that dictator, but the reality was, and it seems to be, is that it's the international country, the superpowers, the biggest countries that break international law themselves. They undermine it so much, and then at some point it reaches a tipping point and it just collapses. And I feel like we just got closer to that tipping point. I mean, you know, it's just you know, US has pretty much, they, yeah, any deal they've made, they went back on. So yeah. So yeah, that's another point I wanted to make.
That's true, but I guess the point that you made first about, you know, sure, if they break their promises and all that, people say this now, but they can easily reverse that down the line with money and media and short-term memory and everything.
Yeah, but look, there is a thing about America's soft power. Like nobody, my professor once at university made this point. Nobody goes buys a like a T-shirt with, like rarely it happens with
Yeah.
like Bolivian. You know what I mean? Like they buy like American, or socks that has American flag on it. So I think that's going away. It's a good thing. I think they're growing up. They're realizing that it's not like they kept thinking America is this sort of good policeman of the world, and now they're realizing
You
no.
hope so,
And
but
and yeah, I hope
no,
so. I
sorry.
mean,
Yeah, I
at least
mean,
this lady in this interview,
yeah,
it's
you hope so, but even now, people are still saying, "Oh, maybe the Americans should have stayed longer, and they could have done better, or they could have withdrawn better." So even within this
I think they
situation,
could
they
have
still have some
withdrawn
faith.
better.
Yeah,
No, they could. Let's now I wanted to get to this debate because I thought you would probably disagree with me there, because I heard all these stuff about the left that like there was nothing we could do. You cannot reflect the word in your image. What do they say? It's a saying thing. And all that. And no, this is not some philosophical or some rocket science or some really complex issue about understanding the culture of Afghani tribes. It's about money. Americans weren't willing to spend money, and the money they spent, they were siphoning it out to their own companies, and or the Afghani officials that were paid were all the money ended up in UAE and India and all these Singapore, all these tax havens. So this I'm sorry, but I don't believe in this sort of fundamental belief that we shouldn't intervene and we shouldn't try to change the world. Of course we should, but we should do it with plans and with proper amount of resources. They spent $2 trillion in 20 years and they think they've done so much. They think, oh, $2 trillion
yeah.
of American taxpayers.
I mean, not that it makes a
Fuck,
difference,
I'm
but is the
sorry. It's
figure
so.
that they throw around 2 or 3 trillion?
I heard on one shot two, I think. Maybe it was three.
Yeah, no, you're
Sorry,
right. You're absolutely right
maybe I
too.
was
You're
wrong.
absolutely right. Oh yeah, it's when they say 300 million a day. Sorry, that's where I got the
As if,
confusion of
as
the
if, by the
two.
way,
Yeah,
Afghanistani people ask them to do that. Don't
yeah.
like nobody asked you to spend that money,
And the
and
money was spent.
it's
Yeah.
just so. And it's nothing. They look at. I went and checked that the budget for one U.S. state for 1 year is like just less than $1 billion.
Yeah.
One state in U.S. a state that is developed, that already has infrastructures, airports, and what you think you did a good job. Again, they shouldn't have invaded. If you don't have the money, if you don't have the guts, if you don't have the will, don't do it.
Yeah.
But don't say that it's about the culture of Afghanistan,
No.
graveyard of empires, nobody can do. Fuck you. They're reducing the just when it comes to the East, people of the East, as if they're aliens or something. But if you build schools, if you build roads, if you put non-corrupt politicians in charge, Afghani people would reject it
And that's
like
the thing. I mean, I don't think they've spent any money on building anything. I mean, I can't remember who was talking about some small clinics here and there, but no, bridges, this kind,
very,
which can
very,
still be done for
very.
selfish ideas. I mean, you hear
I
that
mean,
about
there are.
Africa, and that the Chinese, they spend their money and they build infrastructure. They do it for selfish ways, but I mean, it's still better than perhaps
Yeah,
bombing.
when you spend most of your money on consultants that consult each other on how better to run businesses, or on imaginary products that will never be bought,
Yeah.
or the money ends up going back to the US. And just there are, by the way, loads of videos. I thought it's not even worth mentioning. There are loads of videos comparing Soviet Union presence 9 years
Mhm.
to American presence, their legacy, these guys' legacy, in terms of just buildings, all
Building
that.
like some infrastructure and things here and there. Yeah,
Even women education.
yeah.
Let's not forget, less than one third of After 20 years, less than 1/3 of Afghan women are educated. Less than third. After 20 years of, I mean, now we know because of secret documents that 80% of the country was under Taliban control anyway. So.
Yeah, I know Phyllis Bennis does a great job in the analysis news, and she points out that yes, in Kabul and then in Parliament. Yeah, go ahead. I was just saying in the Parliament and stuff, you do see there's some women that were, joined the Parliament and all this, but when you look at in the rural areas, those kind of progresses don't seem to have happened.
So I thought I'm going to get some pushback from you on my whole like money thing, and you're going to be a bit more of a usual leftist. So that didn't work out. So I'll move on to my second contagious point. Maybe I hope I get some pushback on this. It's kind of a two-parter. First of all, that complement. I hope and I think each other. And again, I'm not sure about any of my views and all that. One is I think the left doesn't like when
what do you mean by the left? You're sorry. By the left, you're talking about liberals,
liberals
or even more
in the US.
Okay.
Liberals in the US, but no, left people who are actually socialists, let's say.
Okay.
Even people talk about Afghanistan, or anywhere, like about change in our society. They don't seem to, like when I read Marx, one of the great things I loved about him was that he seemed to provide a historical materialism, which was a step-by-step process towards a post-scarce society in which an ideal organization could be reached, right? You had to go through capitalism, and one of the major criticism of Soviet Union was that, and not criticism, one of the major reasons why they said it failed was that because it went from feudalism to capitalism without the whole, communism, without the capitalism, and without bourgeoisie being really truly developed and all that. So you see people keep talking about there should be, legitimate government chosen by the democratic people, and people of Afghanistan should talk. Who are the people of Afghanistan? The nation of Afghanistan, all societies are imagined societies, but the nation of Afghanistan is still in the process of the imagination. It's not even imagined fully. So, and I just don't think we can have that. We can have democracy even at a very limited way until there is a strong centralized state. Some things are established, and then you have and I don't even mean like a couple of years. I mean like a class of people formed that can participate and can do, or diaspora comes back, and then you move on to new things. So this kind of relates to, for example, there was this was Stephen Colbert pointed this out, and I thought he did, after many years, he did a real good job in his segment. He pointed out that there was above 70% or 75% support for the invasion of Afghanistan, and now there is above 70 or 75% support for the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And you see democracy or will of the people, not that, by the way, like everything people of America want gets done, but I'm using this example, and I know it's not a example that is appropriate for all occasions, but I just want to point out that people are not ready for democracy, and people, especially when it comes to important decisions like economy, war, invading country, things like that, I don't think having them involved, not, by the way, because they're bad or anything, it's just because people like Paul Wolfowitz or Rumsfeld or these Cheneys, they can manipulate people so easily by scaring them, by lying to them. Right now, media is focus on bad. Taliban is awful. What's happening is awful, but it's so easy to manipulate people and all that. So I think the left is just has a extremely unrealistic view of the people and humanity at this point. And yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought maybe you have some pushback on this.
No, I mean, I don't think I really have pushback there. And I don't know, I think kind of goes to the initial part. And I don't want to say that, oh, like in the West, there's like perfect democracy and all this. But for instance, does this example kind of complement actually what you were saying? So with the Egyptian revolution, right? I was blown away at how quickly, as soon as the former government was put down, how quickly they wanted to have the election. I was like, how is it possible that you're like rushing to an election right now? Shouldn't there be like just someone for 3 to 4 years, non-democratic or whatever, take care of like the country a little bit, and then let's say in 4 years, 5 years, you plan an election? If there have never been political parties who were allowed to, debate and thrive at least a little bit, how can you quickly after a revolution have an election? And of course, the Egyptian military was great for them because, they knew that there will be only the Muslim Brotherhood, nobody else will become strong. So then they can perhaps deal with them. So I don't even know if you agree with the narrative, the way I put it, but I feel like that's like the same. They kind of just rush it. And of course, rushing to the next step is beneficial for some people. But yeah, from the get-go, I was like, how? You just said that there was Mubarak in charge all the time. How could there possibly be an election that's good this quickly, or even relatively okay?
No, even that's the thing. There is a major central contradiction, I think, in the thoughts of people who are leftist and also democratically minded and believe local democracy or more power to the people works. And the major contradiction is reality that they don't seem to acknowledge. That, as you said, let's say the election that followed Mubarak was a perfect election in terms of like the handling of the election. What you had in Egypt or what you had in Iran or what you had in US or a lot of places is a system of repression which included a lot of bad things, and one of them was the very bad education system that would have tried to, as we say, probably they wouldn't agree, but brainwash people into believing like the dictator is the good guy, the cult of the personality of the dictator, or this specific ideology, right? And then left accepts that yes, these institutions should be fixed, these institutions are bad, these institutions are brainwashing people, fooling people. But then same people come up to you and say, those people who are fooled, those people who I said went through these institutions that sadly gives them a distorted view, whatever that means, of the words, I think those people should decide. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's like, that doesn't make sense. Like, those people will make the wrong decision because they came up in the system. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a snake, it's in its own tail in a way. You know what I mean?
I mean,
of course, if you go to a temple where children back in the days, like in monks, like children were forced to go to a temple, and they don't know anything else outside of temple, and to ask them, okay guys, what kind of lifestyle you want to choose, they're going to probably vote again for that temple life. But that doesn't mean that's the right decision to do, so
I mean, if I would differ with you here a little bit, and I would say, let's say a lot of people do know differently and they do think differently. So in Egypt, a lot of people wanted to get rid of Mubarak and have something else. There just wouldn't be like the planning and the organization and all of this in place for something better to come up. Otherwise, it just gets hijacked by those who are more powerful and in place already.
No, but that's exactly my point, that they wanted Mubarak out, but they didn't know what they wanted instead.
Which makes sense. I mean, you need to take your time and
makes sense.
figure things out.
It makes sense. But then the leftist leaders, the good guys or whatever, the nice guys, or
I mean, I wouldn't call those leftists though. That's one place I would disagree with you. That's like the liberals kind of, the centrist,
No, but socialists. But even Noam Chomsky, man, all these people say that you should go towards the more local power, distribute power to the people and all that. And have you seen the people? Most of the people are not most of the people, if put in the position of Biden, would do worse than him, in my experience. This idea that most people are actually good, or not that they're bad or good or anything. It's just most people are we're disappointing. We do the easy thing, and we get manipulated very easily by
For
forces.
dealing with day-to-day stuff. I mean, yes, you want democracy and everything, but leaders, I mean, people, politicians, all this, I mean, you need to have expertise. Yeah, you need to have some expertise and skills and all that.
So I don't understand when it comes to future of a country. No, we should have a vote, because I see that on Afghanistan right now. Really? The Taliban is not legitimate. There should be an election very soon held.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay,
I wouldn't do
forget
that
forget about running water, forget about security, forget about electricity. Election.
I mean, I don't know who do you think would win in that situation, even if they had that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if. I mean, I don't. Yeah.
No, totally.
I mean, who would come on top? I mean, I don't know the consensus, but of course, in some areas.
But by the way, I do hope I'm wrong about this, though, and I do hope one day somebody convinces me that I'm wrong. I do hope, this is not like something I'm happy to think. It's just something that when it's a conclusion I come to. It's not, I want to think that. I wish every one of us could change the world through our vote. Who doesn't want that? But
yeah, no, sorry, I think there's some time and space for it. I just find that it's usually like whenever you rush right after, like literally right after a revolution or whatever, it's because you're acting in a bad faith manner, and you know that is the best way to go about it if you have a chance. But I mean, if I was like on the side of the former government in Afghanistan, I really don't know much, and as people can tell, I haven't spoken much because I don't know that much, nowhere even near Sam. But I wouldn't be surprised if like the Taliban or like parts of Taliban or related Taliban associate governments, they come on top if there was some kind of like election that would happen. So I don't think that's a good idea.
And if they don't win, they just do a Al-Sisi style coup d'etat.
Yeah,
it's over.
Yeah, I'm not even saying that people don't know and stuff. You just need to like chill a bit, I guess, like, form some political organizations. Maybe some things happen at a smaller level or something. And then maybe, and exactly, you can deal with bigger stuff like water. I guess there's no disagreement, or infrastructure. There's no disagreement, right? Everybody would agree. Sure, go provide water and spend some money.
They have far more money and far better organizational skill than, the right wing and hardcore, racist, religious bigots, all that. They have far more money and organizations than we ever have. First of all, it's hopeless. But if you do want to take them down, your best hope is to infiltrate them, and then at the last moment, just they win. They'll win.
It seems so for now.
Yeah. Sorry, it's very. Let's end on the saddest note possible, guys. We are all gonna be destroyed by the bigotry of others. But yeah.
No,
but did you anything on Afghanistan stood out on the coverage these days for you? Or?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, the only thing I still get blown away by is whenever people still say that if the Americans stayed longer, it could have been X, Y, or Z, or those that say that they completely say oh, we could have done differently, and now we should have had this plan. Where I mean, there was 20 years. Why would anybody believe that a different plan or approach would work? I mean, that's one that really baffles me. But that's been baffling me for 3 months, so it's nothing new. That's why I haven't said it. That was a narrative from the get-go.
Look, I mean, it just shows how much of a politician, I suppose, they are. They could have let people know earlier and had them evacuate, but that would have meant admitting defeat, and that would have meant 3 months of bad publicity. Now they just have 1 week of bad publicity, and nobody really cares about foreign policy. So
Yeah, oh,
that
I mean,
seems.
if I have one take, sorry, if I have one take is, let me see actually what you think about this. People think that this would be awful for the Biden administration. I really don't think so. One reason being is
Not
that we're
at all.
so early into his administration. Even if even if it was like a bigger fuck up, there is still so much time. There's still 3 years to go. So that's one part I don't see at all. I think Biden
And
will
even if
recover
he
unless
didn't
things
leave,
change.
if he stayed, if he left, if he didn't do anything, none of it would have mattered. Foreign policy does not matter at all.
Yeah, and
In
that too. And
especially in American
yeah.
elections, especially in American elections, where most people don't even know what is a foreign country.
I mean, in the last election, especially, didn't matter. Maybe in the ones a
It
little bit
never, it
before.
has
Yeah.
never. Did George Bush lost?
Well, it depends, but yeah,
Did
not
did Obama
significantly
lose
enough.
after?
Yeah,
No, George Bush didn't lose.
I know he didn't lose, but I mean, even if you talk about like
Oh,
popular
oh,
vote and not getting a lot of vote, but
all
yeah,
right, all right. Oh, the first time around, no,
yeah,
no, but the second time around, especially after he started the war, he won the popular vote as well. Like people don't care about, people care about money. That's pretty much, like, as long as you keep your people well fed, they vote for you. They don't.
yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I'm very suspicious of. But yeah, anything else? But this video can easily be chopped into different sections. So I'm really glad that you stuck
Hopefully
to
it
the
will be.
notes that you that you shared. This Progressive World episode, I'm scared that the computer is gonna have issues rendering this because it's gonna be like a 10 gigabyte 4 hour
6 hours.
segment,
Yes,
but it was
sorry.
good stuff.
The thing was, I thought there was so much good stuff on Taliban and Afghanistani takeover and all that, and I just thought to give a comprehensive something
No,
that
no, it's
is
brilliant.
maybe a slightly different. But yeah, yeah. Hope everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Hope
and
it renders. Don't do this again.
no. But once we actually did a video that was super long and it wasn't doing it, so I just cut it in half, rendered them separately, and put it together. So um I
Oh,
have
thank
techniques, don't
God for
worry.
technology.
No, don't worry, it won't go to
Is
waste.
that
That's for sure.
like editing is magic, right? I don't
More or
know.
less, more or less. But okay, we started off with me bullshitting Ivana Kasparian, and we ended on a more serious, much more serious and
Yeah,
substantial, as we
this
like
is a
to say.
bonus thing.
Yeah,
We are not going to do this every week.
yeah. Okay, good stuff. Okay, if nothing else to say, really good stuff, folks. Please leave your comments, questions, criticisms. I feel like criticisms won't be about Afghanistan, but maybe like the stuff we were saying earlier on. No, I was saying the stuff we are saying earlier on about like
Oh,
the whole race and everything in the US or things like that, that I can see perhaps some criticisms popping up. But if not,
but
comments,
we
questions.
got we're gonna chop them up. Try to, like, if you're gonna do do the comments on a small video about that thing. So it's easier
Yeah.
that way too. What is he talking? Yeah.
But okay, folks, please like and subscribe, and we'll be back with a lot more videos in these coming weeks and months as my little hiatus during the summer messed things up. But okay, now we're back. So thank you, everyone. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video. Thank you.